stage of England's last game against Uruguay.
In behind Holgate, here's Crouch, a century of goals in the Premier League for Peter Crouch.
It's going to be victory for England in this penultimate warm-up game.
And the celebration is back.
Peter Crouch, a cult hero to some.
Huge smile on his face.
Others just cannot.
His ability to stay in the public eye is what allowed me to keep doing this. You know, like you said earlier, you're almost like a shadow for the person you're a lookalike for, and if they fade, you fade as well.
Okay, I'm ready. So yeah, whenever you're ready, if you could just introduce me to yourself.
My name's Luke. I'm a Peter Crouch lookalike, 32 years old. Is that right? Is that good? Yeah, cool. I live in London, where I work freelance as the best Peter Crouch impersonator in the UK. I came across a job listing one day for a Powder Power commercial. They said they were looking for someone at least 6'6" tall to work on this advert, and you know, I'd never done anything sort of similar to that before, but being that I'm the right height, I thought I'd apply, and they hired me, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I showed up on the day, and it was this big commercial shoot, so there's about 300 extras working on this project, and you know, there's all this talk amongst all the extras when we're all just sat gathered beforehand of being like, oh, there's someone famous working on this advert, you know, who is it going to be? And I mentioned to them that I'm standing in for someone apparently. And they, oh, well, it must be whoever you look like. One of the ADs then comes and grabs me, they move me through to the set, and they just stand me in place, and you know, they just say, oh, Peter's going to be doing this, Peter's going to be doing that, and it kind of then occurs to me that, oh, well, I'm standing in for Peter Crouch, that's what I'm doing today. And then they go and get Peter himself, and they bring him in for me, like a substitution, and he steps in to do the advert, and I step out, and while he's there doing that, some of the extras who aren't being used just mentioned to me, it's like, oh wow, and all the clothes and all the stuff, you know, you look just like Peter Crouch, don't you? I mean, this has worked out nicely for you. I was like, yeah, I guess, you know, and that's when I first thought, wow, maybe this is something I could do, you know, going forward as a job. I used to work as a few things when I was younger. I worked in warehousing after I left school. I worked as a dishwasher for a little while, and then as a cook. And I was kind of between jobs. I was working a sort of reception, admin sort of job, but I wasn't getting enough hours, so I was looking for just some extra odd jobs to do. And then this opportunity came up, and it was like, you know, wow, I mean, maybe this could be my thing, you know. And when I was working different jobs when I was younger, you know, I didn't have that. Nothing ever felt like something that you want to do for the rest of your life, you know, that your thing. I can't play any musical instruments. I tried playing piano when I was 12, but I never got past Ode to Joy. Art class, terrible. I can only do stick figures. I got C's in all my GCSEs. There was nothing that I ever stood out in. So I always felt like just someone who blended in to the wallpaper. And when I found this, it was like, oh, I found my thing. You know, I found my thing. I want people to have a good time, you know. I take pride in what I do. When I said that, you know, this is the thing that I found, you know, that means a lot to me. So I started reading all about Peter Crouch, you know, I started learning about the things that he would say, you know, things that he would do. I mean, the robots to go to one, I mean, that was a massive phase. It was before I even started as a lookalike, but it still has, you know, that people still get that reference of who you are, and they still expect you as a Peter Crouch lookalike to crack that out on the dance floor. There's a very famous Peter Crouch gag from when he was younger. He was on a talk show, and someone asked him, you know, what would you be if you weren't a professional footballer? And he said a virgin. You know, which is a good one to always crack out. People always say to me, you know, if you want a Peter Crouch lookalike, what would you be? And I'll say to them, a virgin. And to be honest, half the time they understand the joke, and then half the time they don't understand the reference, and I look a bit weird. But you have to keep up to date with everything that the person you're as a lookalike is doing. You know, it's good for you to know what they're up to, because it helps you target possible bookings in the future, or come up with new ideas to make yourself more relevant. You know, obviously Peter Crouch has started working as a podcaster, has that Peter Crouch podcast. I started playing with the idea of starting up a podcast of my own, you know, to help drum up business and to maybe get more of a word out about the lookalike world. I was going to call it that Peter Crouch lookalike podcast. But in the early stages, I got a cease and desist letter, so I couldn't continue with that.
Peter Crouch, the man on the spot. A goal he deserves. You may as well enjoy it.
It's always nice when you're there for a really big occasion. I remember doing one here in London a few years ago where we're counting down in the last sort of minute. And there were literally hundreds of people there. You know, they're all bringing in their new year in this party, and where the guy who's supposed to be emceeing it just hands the mic to me and says, "Oh, Peter, everyone listen, Peter Crouch is going to count in the new year." So I go up on this stage and I'm counting down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and I look around and everyone is just staring at me. All their joy is fixed on me. And I'm going to count in this new year as the person in the spotlight in this room. And I count 2, 1, you know, Happy New Year. And everyone screams back, you know, Happy New Year to me. Hundreds of people. It was like, wow, you know, goosebumps. It's kind of magical, you know. I mean, obviously I'm not a princess who can turn things into ice. And in fact, I'm not even that good a footballer, but they still believe anyway. And those moments, you know, those are the things that I cherish, and those are the reasons why I do what I do. But it's weird how putting on a shirt and the belief that you have in yourself once you walk in that, you know, for tonight, I am this person. The joy, the smiles, as soon as you walk in and you see that everyone smile and that they are willing to believe that you are this person, with a nod and a wink, saying, oh yeah, for tonight, we'll believe you are Peter Crouch, and we'll all laugh and we'll all smile. And it was the first time I felt sort of comfortable in that environment. You know, people decide on your behalf. It's very difficult to choose that you're going to be a lookalike. And I found that with a lot of my friends who've worked in this. They've been told, oh no, you look like Ed Sheeran. Oh, you know, you look like Prince Harry. I don't know why I chose two people that look very alike. I don't know, they just both came to my mind. I know a guy who actually does both sometimes. Double books. Very greedy. I tried to avoid looking at other Peter Crouch lookalikes too much. At first I did, but it just wasn't healthy. We already have a bit of a competition sort of thing going on. You're obviously fighting for bookings between just a few of you. So you don't really want to get drawn into one of these really ugly spats. You can only compare yourself to yourself yesterday rather than to other people. I read that on a coaster. You know, we've had social events before where these things have kicked off. Not between the Peter Crouch lookalikes, I might add. But there was a real nasty fight between a few of the Prince Charles lookalikes one year. One of them had a few too much to drink and had been having a better year than the other two. And it turned into a three-way Prince punch-up sort of thing. Obviously, I first met Peter on the advert when I worked as a stand-in, and how that led into what I do for a career now. But there have been a few more opportunities over the years. You know, I've dropped by working at Crouch Fest a couple of times just around the crowds and stuff for photos and things like that. when we met in passing. He was very nice once and signed a little photograph there for me, you know, which was really nice of him to do. You know, it reminds me why I keep doing this, you know. At least I've got one big fan. Hi B2, it's good to see you again.
Hey, hello.
Thank you for agreeing to speak to me.
Oh, no bother.
No, I know you're very busy, obviously, but I thought, you know, I was trying to get the advice of someone who's a lot more experienced than me within the agency, and I'm just struggling recently with getting any bookings for anything, and I guess I've started having these doubts that, you know, maybe I'm starting to lose it as a lookalike.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, something that people say that, well, you know, in the UK, in England, it's all about Priti Patel, but she's also been out of office, as you know. It's now Suella Braverman, and I'm trying to look like her, but then nobody agrees that I do. I think in circumstances like this, you know, have you ever thought of Peter Crouch stand-up comedy?
I think for all lookalikes, you try to not compare your life to the person you look alike, because it's always going to be a pale imitation. At the end of the day, we, unfortunately, is the truth, is that we live off the scraps of what these people have done before. You are within their shadow, you know, you get little pieces of what they are making. But if they didn't make that, then you wouldn't get it. So, you know, you try not to think about it too negatively, or else you might end up feeling like a parasite. But I do think sometimes about how what Peter makes in a week is what I make in a few years. And if I could just get that for 1 week, you know, that could keep this whole party going for another 5-10 years. You know, when you're getting plenty of bookings, it's not something that enters your mind. It's just in those periods where things aren't coming through that you start to doubt yourself, and you're thinking, well, why aren't these things coming through? You know, is it because Peter's just not a draw as a person as he was, or is it because of me? You know, I lost that touch, you know. Do I not look like that person enough anymore? And because it relies upon people believing that you look like that person, you know, there's only so much you can do to win that back. You know, you can try and style yourself in the mirror a bit more, or then you think, has it gone too far and I just don't look like that person anymore? And then a booking comes through and you're like, well, apparently I do. The difficulties you face working as a lookalike when things are slow are not just existential, obviously, because you have a bit of a crisis of confidence in yourself, thinking, you know, have I still got it? But then just the real world parts of it come in. You know, I may be a lookalike, but obviously I've still got rent to pay. You know, I've got bills to pay, and if you're not getting the work in, not only are you doubting yourself, you're also doubting the viability that you can make a career of doing this, that you can keep this going a little bit longer. That question of how much time you have, it hangs over all our heads. You don't always end up looking like someone who can last a lifetime, you know. I mean, I know a guy who works as a Jimi Hendrix lookalike and has done for, 50 years, but that's rare. A lot of people, they find their time, but eventually it catches up with them and they fade. In terms of having a family and planning for the future, I don't know. It's kind of something that I keep pushing out of my mind. Like, I'll think about it in a year. I'll think about it in a year. I'll think about it in a year. And then suddenly, you know, you're approaching your mid-30s and you're like, oh, I still don't know. Not many people want to date someone who is working in such a tumultuous industry, you know. You know, they are looking for someone they want to settle down with, not someone who's got to drive to Great Yarmouth or Torquay every weekend when they are working. And then you look about maybe dating within the industry, the lookalike world, because then you can meet someone you understand, but then they're on bookings as well at the same time as you are. You don't always see each other. The ideal is to team up with someone who works completely within your sphere. I know a couple, Kerry and Jake, who work as William and Kate Middleton impersonators. I mean, that's the dream, because they work together, they get good bookings all the time, the royal family are always going to be in the public eye, so that's the dream. And I did meet, actually, on a job once, an Abby Clancy impersonator. Of course, Abby Clancy is married to Peter Crouch. So I thought, oh, well, you know, this would be perfect, wouldn't it? So I pitched the idea to her, but, oh, maybe we could go out sometime, you know, get a drink and maybe talk about business or maybe more. And she seemed really keen on the idea at first and gave me a number. When I called it when I got home, it was for an Indian takeaway. It obviously creates a lot of anxiety not knowing if this is something that's going to last for a lot longer, because you think to yourself, you know, is this going to last another year, 5, 10? There's a lot of doubt in the world right now, and you know that comes for us as well. You know, there's a lot of anxiety, and then that affects your ability to work. I think a lot of people are going through it right now in all sorts of different worlds. You know, I think maybe I'd have these problems if I wasn't a lookalike. I think that's why I keep going, because I think to myself, well, what else would I do? You know, that's a scarier thought than the whole, can I even still do this? I have to take every day as it comes because of the amount of uncertainty that we have working as lookalikes. The future, you can't really plan for it unless you're one of those lookalikes who is just, you know, terrific. I know an Ed Sheeran lookalike. I mean, he can plan for the future. A couple of Donald Trump guys, these people, you know, they're making so much at the moment that they can have savings, you know, and they can buy houses and they can have their investments on the side and plan for the future, because, you know, right now it's not feast or famine for them, it's feast. But for the 95% of us who work in this industry, you know, we don't have that. We do the job to make enough to pay the bill for this month, and we hope we can do the same next month. It doesn't feel good if people are mocking you, saying that you don't look like the person that you're supposed to be a lookalike for. Obviously, that's what you are there for. That's literally your job title, your purpose for being there. So if you have some people immediately just say, no, you don't look anything like that person, what are you doing? It feels not just like you're being mocked, it feels like an accusation almost of fraud, that you are a liar. It can get very toxic. It can feel very aggressive, with people saying, you know, you shouldn't even be like taking money for this, you know, because you don't look anything like this person. And to be accused of, well, not doing a good job is one thing to be accused of. To be called a liar and a fraud is hurtful. It's nice when you look like someone who you actually feel you have an affinity to. You know, I feel like me and Peter have a similar sense of humour, you know, a similar sort of carefree attitude. And, you know, sometimes when you read into these books and things, you know, you see pieces of yourself in there, you know. It's interesting reading these books. It's got me thinking about what I'd do if I was to write a book, you know, along with this film about my experiences, like to go into details about what it's been like, you know. I think me and Peter have a lot in common in a lot of ways, apart from the fact that we look alike. You know, maybe in another lifetime, Peter would have been a Luke lookalike.